Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to also share my screen. Here we go. As we have our conversation regarding the skills gap study. So this afternoon, you will be learning about the skills gap study. We worked in partnership with Networks Northwest, NMC, and Northwest Educational Services to produce this, this webinar. We will be asking that you raise your hand should you have any questions, and you are also welcome to place your questions in the chat section. So my name is Brenda McClellan, and I'm Director of Investor Engagement with Traverse Connect. So we'll begin now. Warren Call, President and CEO of Traverse Connect, will be leading the discussion. And with that, Warren, let's take it away.
All right, thanks, Brenda, and thanks everybody for being with us today. It's great to have you with us. I also want to just pause to say thanks to our partners that are here with us on the call, as well as everyone that has participated in the survey. It was great to have such wide involvement. We'll just jump right in, and I'm going to review just a handful of some of the key findings, but then we'll get to a question and answer and really get to the meat of this. What you see here on the slide right now is kind of the headlines, right? The key findings. I think to no one's surprise, employers are having an overwhelming, demand and face huge challenges when trying to get people. Nearly 2/3 of the companies that participate in the survey have unfilled jobs. And what you see here is the key things, right? The education level is, not just a high school diploma, but it is less than a bachelor's. That's kind of the key area. Early career or low experience level is the biggest demand. And we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but skilled trades is the key area. And importantly, people have missed, employers are missing employees with gaps in specific technical areas, but also in personal areas. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. Obviously, there's no silver bullet, but one of the things that we have focused on here and talked with our partners about is some of the short-term fixes that we can do locally without necessarily waiting on federal programs, state programs, that we can hopefully address as quickly as possible. Obviously, all of this is in the context of a continued, difficult environment when it comes to pandemic-related health concerns. The unemployment benefits just dropped off, and we still have, expensive housing and childcare, as everyone knows. So there's continuing problems that we had before the pandemic that have, obviously accelerated some of these things. Again, the study had broad support, so I would just touch on the fact that we had over a dozen industries and over 120 individual responses. But now jumping into it, the key thing here, as you see, is the associate's degree. The vocational and technical training are the areas that were most highlighted by employers as areas that are needed as far as the skill level. Obviously, there's demand for bachelor's degrees, there's demand for high school diploma level roles as well. But when you look at this, it's really that combination of the entry-level positions with technical training. That's where we see, again, going to some of the short-term solutions we see that we can be done here locally. If we can address those two key things, we'll at least be helping tackle the beginnings of a big problem. The next page, obviously, everyone needs help. And we hear a lot about short staffing, for example, in hospitality. That's a crucial need right now. But what we found in this study was that the skilled trades are by far the biggest area of demand. Now, that's not to take anything away from manufacturing, health care, or anything else. But I do think we need to, again, when we think about what can we do here locally and quickly, we do need to keep in mind that the biggest gaps and the biggest demand right now, most urgent, is in that skilled trades area. On the next slide, you'll see, there's a few more details in the actual full report, and I would encourage you to look through that. But I did want to just touch briefly on a couple of things. Hiring managers, what we heard from them was that they face a number of significant challenges with the current pool of applicants as it relates to both personal and technical skills. So on the personal side, to start off with, and you can see here that we highlighted the graph outlining the numbers as far as problem solving skills that are needed, the critical thinking, troubleshooting, analytical skills. In addition to that, the other personal issues that were cited, reliability, and I don't think any employer would be surprised by that, but reliability being a key issue, showing up on time, dependable, all that kind of stuff. And then communication skills. So both active listening and customer service skills. So there's some things that, kind of pretty basic personal skills that are being called out as significant gaps. We've also had a couple of things shine through on the technical skill side. So you can see from this that the technology skills on the screen, computer usage being the number one, is a key area of need. But the report also mentions the need for basic math skills. And that's an area where even people that do have degrees or high school diplomas, we still have some gaps there. So, and one of the key findings here that we found is that most employers are trying to address these gaps with on-the-job training, which is a challenge, right, for any employer. If you go to the next one, we have a couple of kind of key short-term recommendations. And really what that is develop, we think there's an opportunity to both promote what's existing and develop more focused kind of micro-credential programs covering both the personal and technical skills that are needed. We think there's an opportunity to, have the sessions that teach this training be done in, a very brief time frame, in workplace readiness style or last mile training boot camp format. We think that there's maybe an opportunity to target the skills so that you're teaching the technical skills in kind of a project-based learning environment where hopefully some of those communications and personal skills can also be woven in. So we see an opportunity for that. Encouraging the development of innovation, et cetera. The second kind of midterm suggestions here are specific development and expansion of especially equipment training. So again, in the skilled trades, there's a lot of demand for industrial control certificates. We need to help get more training out there for heavy equipment operation, forklift, et cetera, carpentry. We think there's might be an opportunity here for the public sector and the private sector to work together with education providers. For example, is there equipment that can be loaned to an education or training provider from the private sector to help with some of this training and hopefully get that employer, their people the upskills that are needed. On the long term, which is the last thing we'll go into detail on here. Obviously, we see a lot of opportunity for collaboration, right, between education providers and regional partners, building on what is already done well here. We do think that we as a region need to think about a local pipeline for skilled trades, how we expand career tech, how we perhaps even introduce a broader set of vocational training in the schools. Some people did specifically call for the return of shop class, for example. But regardless, we have to think about that career pathing and guidance counseling that can help kids find the right career path and hopefully address some of these gaps longer term. So with that, let me stop talking. And the idea here is that we want to make sure that we are both addressing questions from the audience, but also we wanted to kind of kick it off with a few questions that certainly were pointed at from the study's findings. So let's start. We've got our panelists here. We're going to start with something that's somewhat NMC specific. So Ed and Jason, you can kick us off, and then we can go from there with other panelists. Obviously, the valued micro credentials are a key takeaway from this report. I think some people may not be aware of the existing micro-credentials that NMC currently has available, and also your ability to offer custom solutions. So to kick us off, why don't we begin with, share with us some details about the misconceptions and maybe the gaps that you want to educate us all on that needed to create either new micro-credential programs or the ones that are already in process. So please, Ed, Jason, take it away.
Sure, and I'll start, Jason, and you can follow up. So, I mean, you're correct, Warren. I'm not sure people are aware, but NMC currently offers 11 micro-credentials already. They're focused in 4 different areas, basically survey technologies, geospatial systems, which is our drone technologies, the marine technology, which is what Brenda tried to explain as she read my bio, so, which made me need to update that. And then more relevant to what the conversation here was really on what we'd call technical competencies. And we have a micro-credential in electronics, microcontrollers, PLCs, industrial maintenance, and machining fundamentals. And so we have these existing programs right now. We're offering classes, we've enrolled students in that. I think we need to make this more readily, basically raise the awareness of that. The other component of this, and you mentioned it, is we have the ability to put together any kind of micro-credential package that makes sense for industry. So if there's a cluster of courses or cluster of technologies or competencies that the industry sector is interested in, we can easily pull that together. And we can do that either specific for an industry group. So for example, if Elmer's is really interested in a set of skill set, industry, we can pull that together, or we could build a package that may be broad. One of the issues we have in the region is we have lots of manufacturing, but not really a lot of big firms. And so sometimes it's hard to aggregate those. And so we certainly have the ability to do that. And I think we hope to work more with Travis Connect and others. And I like that the report called out this sort of region-wide collaboration, which we do have, but to strengthen that so that we can make these things become kind of more aware. And then finally, on the technical programming, if there's any technical classes that folks feel like they need help in, we can provide that. It's simply a phone call, a conversation, and we can put that together. We do that for the electricians as part of the Joint Training Center. We do that for industry, for very specific or very custom things. So I think that's kind of a broad overview. Jason, did I miss anything or?
No, I think you nailed it. I think one of the key takeaways is this isn't an or statement. You don't need to go down the micro credential path or traditional academic path. We've done a really good job here at NMC of blending the two together. So we can bring you in from multiple directions and then help you find those skill sets that you need through a set of micro credentials. And then maybe as you mature through your career, we can bring you back in and get you that certificate or that degree you need. I think Ed nailed it. We can customize it. We need feedback, and we can use that feedback to design a course that's appropriate. And to your point, Warren, I think if we take one of those areas that we selected as in need and kind of dive in a little bit deeper, it kind of will give a clear path as to what I'm talking about. So for instance, we had a company that approached us in the summer and they said they needed industrial controls training. And we said, fantastic, we'll work with you. And so working with them, their HR department, Networks Northwest Michigan Works, we were able to identify some funding to support that opportunity. Ed's group created a really great micro-credential focused around industrial controls that provided them troubleshooting skills and other things that they wanted. They took it in our academic lab, actually using our academic instructor in this micro-credential setting. Once they completed that course, we met with them from an academic standpoint and said, hey, you have this class done. It's equivalent to this academic course. We can accelerate you through our PLC certificate. So look, you're already a fifth of the way done with this course that you took. We didn't tell them that even later on, we could roll that into an associate's degree. So the idea is that we can bring them in, give them those skills, and then help them find that pathway that works for them.
Great stuff. And I think that the more employers that know about that kind of, especially that custom option and the flexibility that it provides, I think we can encourage more employers to start using that.
And for those, just real quick, Warren, and for those that are interested and want to know, you simply get on the NMC web page and type in professional development in the search bar and/or micro credentials, and it will take you to a listing and contact information, and you can reach out to any or all of us. I see Laura Matchett and Elizabeth Son have been on there. They're also part of the NMC team that delivers these programming. And so we would be glad to help deliver whatever really industry feels is important. So,
Great.
thanks.
Yeah, again, going back to what we saw in the study, so many employers are hiring the staff they can get and then trying to upskill on the job. So I think that there's a role for NMC and others to play in helping with that process. So let's go to the next question I have here. From the study, obviously we see that the skilled trades, again, along with education, manufacturing, and hospitality, are all challenged with finding talent. I thought maybe Tanya, on behalf of Elmer's, obviously a big employer of skilled trades, maybe you could talk a little bit about the ways that you're trying to attract people to your industry, to your company. And then Terry, maybe you can talk about it from a broader sense, from the standpoint of various skilled trades employers.
So it's been a long time coming. So obviously we have numbers that we're trying to get into the door, right? We don't have the people coming in. So how do we get to them? So we've partnered with a lot of people, NMC leading the way with the Building Tomorrow event. So trying to get to younger generation and know or teach them that construction as a career is a possibility. So we have a lot of programs tied to that. Like I said, NMC Building Tomorrow is one. Networks Northwest partnered and is doing the My Career Quest now, trying to get to that younger generation to get them aware of that as a career. We also do a statewide, so Michigan Construction is another one we partner with. That's through our Michigan Concrete Association, again, statewide for job opportunities, and they're actually pushing that's more 18 and up program to get people aware of construction as a career. And I don't know, our statistics, 2024, they're saying 500,000 open jobs for the construction field in the state of Michigan itself. So that's a huge gap for us to fill. A lot of people are aging out of the system, retiring, going on to do other things, and we need to fill that and retain some of that knowledge from all those that are leaving. So CTC, so we go to job fairs, we go to the career tech centers, anything that we can do, build your life through the Home Builders Association. Facebook, we've done social media, we've done clone groups. So we've taken a sample of who our employees are now and tried to go out and find similar people that may want to work for us. Everyone says digital is the future, and it is, asterisk, because even though we get huge amounts of interest and inflow and applications from that, our best candidate still is word of mouth, asking people or our employees to talk about their career, talk about us as a potential employer, and ask yourself, are your own crew doing that for you? And when they talk about it, are they talking positively? So trying to do that. And then for us as a philosophy, we really believe people matter, and they're the number one resource that we have. So living that philosophy is really important for us. And I think that's benefiting us now, especially coming through the last 18 months that we have. We have a chaplain on staff. A lot of people have an ELP program where they're trying to, or EAP, where they're trying to assist employees when they come through crisis. We have someone on staff that has built the relationship already with the person, so that if a crisis should strike, he can reach out to them when that happens and help them through that. Those are all soft things. It's not getting the skill building. You know, we hire for that attitude. We hire for the work ethic, and then we train from there. So hearing Ed say that we can custom fit something is really encouraging, because in our industry, especially in this area, it's really hard to find specific training. We usually have to bring people in to get that NCCER credentialing, or AIS has actually started one down in Lansing. But again, that's travel time for us. Their shortest course is, you start with 6 weeks and then you can graduate to another 4-week course. That's a lot of time away from families in a different bed. So finding something local that we could fashion is really important for us.
Great, thanks, Tanya. Terry, any thoughts from a standpoint of kind of the broader industry?
Yeah, I want to applaud Tanya and recognize that people first attitude of bringing these folks in is so important. I think when you talk about attraction today, whether that's in skilled trades or for any of the other industries that are joining us on this call, You know, when you look at attraction as a whole, we have all seen the now hiring signs and those wages that we're not used to seeing in some of these industries. And that's often what some employers are driven to as an attraction tool. And I just want to say that, you know, you really need to try to go beyond that. So that may be the attention getter, if you would, in a sales situation or in a conversation. But, you know, anytime that an employer can bring in a benefits package that you know is a bit different or caters to an employee in a certain way or has some flexibility. Is there in some industries the opportunity to introduce some remote work, which is important nowadays? Obviously, that's in front of everybody's mind. Can you demonstrate, you know, regular pay raises, access to training? What we're talking about now today, access to employer rate or employer paid training. Is there a childcare option? And I think when it comes to attraction, whether it's skilled trades or otherwise, employers really have to look for that opportunity. And clearly not every opportunity or not everything I just discussed can every employer deploy, or is it appropriate for their environment? But is there something that you have that you can show the employee or that prospective employee that you're willing to go one step beyond, you know, potentially what your competition, because that's really what it is with some of the employees that we have now in the labor market we're in. But can you place yourself in a different position to attract that talent? And I think that's, again, important across all industries. But then I want to put my recruiting hat on just for a second and try to get you to think about the process that is different now when you actually do recruit for new employees is what it may have been years ago. You know, so there was a time when an employer could sit back potentially and screen candidates and recognize that they may have a dozen candidates to choose from or 24 candidates to choose from. And it wasn't as important, if you would, if the employer did some of the things I just mentioned, or if the employer really had to sell themselves. But I think now, as quality candidates come in the door, it's that much more important that the employer places them in a position of actually wanting to put themselves in the best slate possible. I think that starts with a job posting. When you put that job posting out there, you want to think in terms of selling your company and selling the position. We tell job seekers that it's your resume that gets you the interview. It's the interview that gets you the job. Well, as an employer in today's environment, it might very well be your job posting that gets you the candidates you're looking for. And it's during that interview that you let that candidate know, basically sell them, if you would, on why they want to work for you. What are the benefits of working for your company, and, you know, and what do you offer? And I think if you start at the very beginning of that process, and then you introduce some of those important things that Tanya's already talked about, I think you just have that much better chance of both attracting an employee, and then ultimately, based on what you can offer them, the retention piece is really important. The more you retain, the less you have to attract.
Yeah, great point. Certainly would welcome other panelists that have thoughts on that as well. As we obviously, attracting the talent is the challenge that everyone's dealing with. This report indicates obviously strong demand for vocational and technical training, with some respondents, as I mentioned earlier, even saying that they'd like to see a return of shop class in high schools. Pat, what do you see on the horizon for NORED, the Career Tech Center, and what can we do to educate young people of the opportunities in these areas?
Thanks, Warren. Yeah, start with that first question on the shop schools coming back. I would be in favor of that, but I think it needs to be prior to the high school age. I would call for that to start in middle school and have shop classes coming back to the middle school. High school is real limited. That changed in 2006 with the Michigan Merit Curriculum and the offerings that high schools are allowed to offer in the minimum amount of elective credits. But if we could get kids interested in late elementary, early middle school, in shop classes, and those are the ones where you used to talk about building the bird feeders or in welding the ashtrays, and that doesn't happen at a state approved CTE program. The technology that we're utilizing in those programs is at a far higher level, but that's where interest is created. So I would push for that. I would also be willing to look at ways and opportunities to utilize our state-of-the-art facility in times of the year, such as summer, for some type of educational program for middle school kids to get their hands on some of the equipment and state-of-the-art programming that we could offer within our building, and start that interest in a career field in the skilled trades at an earlier age and level. As far as what's coming down the pike, there's some pretty significant changes due to Perkins 5 legislation and a big push from the state of Michigan, Office of Career and Technical Education, through the Career Pathways grants. And those are grants that started last year. There were 7 programs that went through this grant procedure, and it involved educators as well as business and industry partners in the field. Business and industry partners determined certain competencies that they were hoping to see kids leave CTE state-approved programs with. So they talked to those educators. And so there's a significant shift now within career and tech ed to get into the competencies that are needed to be successful within a field. And with those competencies, there's a big push for industry certifications. So 7 pathways went through that transformation last year. And now we will be judged as a career tech center offering state-approved programs on how many of our students are able to obtain certain certifications that business and industry partners have put their name and seal behind. So for instance, for our auto tech program, they're hoping that we can have a certain percentage of our students leave with ASE, entry level, engine repair, automatic transmission, manual drivetrain, but ASE specific certifications. You mentioned, I think it was Tanya, NCCER curriculum, but they are asking for our students to look at that curriculum along our construction trades program and our electrical occupations program. Business administration is looking at Microsoft Word certifications, but there's a strong push, and it'll take a few years to get all of our programs paired up through that grant process with business and industry partners to determine what those certifications will be. But we're hoping that our students, because of this legislation, will leave our building with some of those certifications already in hand for business and industry entry. And then I think there was third part of your question was, how do we educate our students? And, I'll tell you, we're sitting at 1,140 kids. Our skilled trades pathways are full. We doubled our electrical occupations pathway. I think it starts with educating kids at the middle school level with career counselors, but I also think we still need to do due diligence in educating our parents of the opportunities that exist for their young children, so that we know that there's other avenues other than that straightforward push for a 4-year bachelor's degree. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and I think that 4-year degree is awesome for those students that know the direction that they want to go when they go off to those institutions. But with the partnerships we have with NMC and the opportunities that exist in our backyard, and hopefully being able to keep our students in this region, because many of the kids, we hear them say it, I just want to leave, I just want to leave. But doggone it, 3, 4, 5 years later, they want to come back. And oftentimes they can't afford to come back because of lifestyles that they've chosen to live outside of the area. But we've got to educate our parents on the opportunities. And I think we need to bring our business and industry partners to the table for that, so that they can explain the career opportunities that exist to the parents in the region, therefore helping push kids in those directions.
Great, thanks, Pat. I'm going to share an anecdote that a business owner recently said to me, that he's glad that most businesses don't know about what NMC and the Career Tech Center are doing, because he finds it's a great pipeline for his employment, getting people in his shop. Obviously, I would like to see more people know about the kids that are coming out of these programs, because it's something that can really help bridge that gap. For the whole panel, maybe we'll open it up a little bit here for a minute. Let's talk a little bit more about the remedies that you're seeing for bridging the gap, this shortage that we have. I'd like to hear from the group about examples, good examples that you've seen that have worked, whether it's on-site training, starting or expanding skill improvement programs. Is it compensation? Is it improving retention of existing employees? Any good example that seems to really get traction, like I just shared with the business owner who's heavily recruiting out of the NMC and CTC programs. So please, whoever would like to jump in, please go ahead.
I would just like to state the partnerships and the days that have been put together: Manufacturing Day, Career Quest, Building Tomorrow, Careers in Energy. Tanya, your crew coming out, I think it was a couple years ago, in the middle of winter and setting up tents. with 30 employees, and allowing our kids to see, not just in our construction program, but our power equipment program, that there is so much opportunity with your company, that those things, kids putting their hands on it, talking to business and industry folks, coming in and having those conversations with kids are incredible.
That's
And the work-
actually one of our success stories, Pat, because we had 4 hires off of that. One of them was permanent because he was graduating, so he was 18 and could work full time, and 3 of them were actually part-time through the summer. So for us, getting out, you can put your message out there, but till you physically go and talk to them one-on-one, and they can see themselves in that area, it's hard to convince them to come on.
come back this year, Tanya.
I'd love
Please.
to, yeah.
Okay.
I think Tanya and Pat nailed it on there. And Tanya, you just said it. They have to see themselves do it. We have a lot of really successful students that come out of our automotive program, or maybe come out of our manufacturing side or engineering tech, and they are uncertain that they'll meet the needs for some of those employers. And what we find is when we have employees in, or we have one of those days like Building Tomorrow, or they just get to meet with someone like Team Elmer's, and they see that they can be a successful part of that company, it really brings them in. We've seen an explosion in some of our companies offering apprenticeships, because that's the same thing. They'll have tapped into an existing NMC student and say, you already have this skill set. If we map out this pathway following an apprenticeship, you could have a successful career here. And it's allowing them to make that connection back from their education to the skills that they need in the job, and see themselves being successful. So Pat and Tanya, you nailed it on that one.
Well, and I don't want to take up everything. One other quick thing I want to mention was the JAG program that we work with Networks Northwest too. I don't know if Lisa Baldega is on the call, but we've had incredible relationships with our auto dealers and our auto tech kids through that program. And our kids going out in business and industry for their work experience, their second year, which is really, I think, transitioned with people at Bill Marsh and Sarah in particular. And so it's working, and it's those relationships in our kids anyways, as second year students, getting those opportunities to either do work experience or co-op. And I'll be quiet.
We appreciate that, Pat. We appreciate that call out. And, we've taken that relationship, because it was working so well. We've taken it to the next level. And Lisa now spends some of her time at NMC specifically working with students on those career skills. And some of them are the students from the Jobs for Americans Graduates program, the Jobs for Michigan's Graduates. Some are NMC students that just need that connection to those services and to know what's available. And I think it should be noted as well, both from a regional and state level, that the situation we're in has been noticed. And it's not just been noticed in Northwest Michigan, but across the state. And that involves programs like Futures for Frontliners and the Reconnect program, what's going to very soon be a program called My Leap. It's one thing for these students and these prospective employees to recognize what they need, or even want to go after it. But sometimes they need some assistance. Sometimes they can't do it on their own, or they just don't know how to access it. And through some of these programs I mentioned, in one, there's navigators, there's coaches to help them navigate, get connected to the technical education, get connected to the employer. But for many of the programs, there's also some financial assistance, so they can navigate that as well and get them in the workforce that much sooner. So, we often hear it takes a village, and I think in this case, it's going to take villages across the region to solve this.
Yeah, I agree, Terry. And to build on what Patrick was saying, I think that by starting younger, right, you get a better ability to build that path for them. And I think what we can showcase is a couple of things. One is, through these skilled trades, you're not only building skills for an economic engine for you later on, but they're common sense skills, right? Just being able to build things, just being able to work on your car, that's something, the saying that common sense isn't so common anymore. A lot of that starts with these foundational things that will help career them later on. I think the other thing that we can talk about is the growth path in these industries, right? So, the career ladders in manufacturing or in skilled trades or in all of these elements, it's not like you're just going to run a machine for the rest of your life. I mean, you could get into purchasing or accounting, or, there's so many branches off of that in these environments that the kids don't know enough about. They have this mental image of, I Love Lucy putting, chocolate covered cherries down their shirts, and that's what manufacturers is, this dark and dingy stuff. So I think by getting in front of them earlier in the middle school formats is exactly the key, and involving the parents in that decision to say, you could send your kids to school and they can come out with $100,000 worth of debt and be handcuffed for the rest of their lives with everybody else, or you can take this other career path, even continue your education while you're working, because almost every business in this area has some sort of tuition reimbursement program that can help them with that, right? And then get to where you want to be in a different path. I almost feel like we're teaching the kids that there's no other options but just to graduate, go to 4 years, and then try to figure it out after that.
And Warren, maybe I can just add one thing, because I think this is a great question. In fact, it probably should be its own discussion or future webinar, because the concept of best practices and how models work would be a really good, engaging conversation. Because not to overgeneralize it, but I think what Tanya has suggested, or what Elmer's is doing, is that student mentorship, and whatever form it takes is, and it doesn't need to be formal, but formal or informal, that's what gets them that pipeline towards careers in places like Elmer's. Is that, again, it's summer jobs, it's internships, it's apprenticeships, it's kind of all of that support that gets to someone who's maybe interested in the construction field at a permanent job in Elmer's.
Excellent points.
Cindy's
Keep
got her
going.
hand up, so I want to know what Cindy's asking.
Yeah, so I'm Cindy Weber, and I work with for Precision Plumbing and Heating, and I, of course, being in the trades here, we feel the pain of having a lack of interested people. But I wanted to share just a brief story and then tell you a little bit about our apprenticeship program in case anyone else is interested as well. But we had a customer call the other day and said his air conditioning had no cooling. And so we set up an appointment to address his issue. And before the conversation closed, he said, just wait a minute. I just want to tell you, I'm an attorney. I just moved into town and I have no life skills. So I thought that was interesting, where I can't fix anything in my house. I don't know how to repair things. So the trades is obviously so critical. When their toilets don't flush and their hot water heater is not working, et cetera, they need our help. And so, which is why all this is so important. But I wanted to share that we have currently 7 apprentices at Precision. We have 2 plumbing and 5 HVAC.
Wow.
And we have a program set up. Actually, it's a double program, a stacked grant program, one through Going Pro through the state of Michigan, where they provide $3,000 per apprentice for basically an incentive to use those funds for education, for their salaries, et cetera, possibly bonuses along the way. And then we also, through Networks Northwest, have a program through the Department of Labor, so a federal program. So we also get $3,000 per apprentice. So by the time both of those programs are completed, Precision will have received $42,000 in grant dollars to help with the education and the training of these young individuals who are interested in making a career in the trades. So it's worked beautifully. It's a combination of on-the-job training and related technical instruction. So they work during the day and obviously paid to work. They have a mentor that they work with and oversees their progress. And then there's a list of skills that they must accomplish and master by the time they're done with the program. And then there's related technical instruction, which we have an online program that they do after hours on the weekends. And I kind of keep track of their progress because I can go in, log in, and watch their progress and address any issues. So that has seemed to go very, very well. One of the things that we always try to tell our young people is that, not everybody gets in this program. It shouldn't be easy. It shouldn't be, you have a pulse, we'll take you, we have high standards. We don't apologize for them. We want to make sure that you understand that you have skin in the game too, and we do too. So this is truly a partnership, but I just wanted to share that it has been a really wonderful program. And prior to Precision, I set up the same program for Dan Brady Painting, and he has plumbing apprenticeships, painting apprenticeships as well. So.
And I think, Cindy, that's great to hear. And I think it's important for everyone to recognize that those programs are entirely customizable. So there's, you would be hard pressed to find an occupation that couldn't be put into an actual DOL registered apprenticeship program. And then what's important is the employer can actually drive what that training is to meet their very own needs. So these aren't cookie cutter apprenticeships off a shelf. We'll pull one off a shelf and then we'll give it to you to allow you to customize it and ensure it meets your needs both in length and in training, duration for the trainee, where that training comes from as far as the technical instruction. So definitely a program that is still underutilized and can be utilized more than it is.
Yes.
Well, and I'd follow that up too, Cindy, because Bob Roll was coming into the Career Tech Center pre-COVID once a week. He brought in a unit for our kids to work on, and here's the co-owner of Precision in our program, working side by side with a group of students that had an interest in HVAC because he realized the need that was there too. And again, I think he stirred some kids in that direction. At least I hope he did, because he was great for the kids in the building working with them. So.
Yes, exactly.
Great example, Cindy, and great feedback too. Let's keep that going. I would welcome other people that are on the call. We'd like to hear from other businesses, others in the community. What are the challenges you're facing? Do you have questions for our panelists? What are maybe success stories like Cindy's that you'd like to share that can help everyone? And please, we can raise your hand, or please feel free to unmute yourself and speak up.
If I could, I'll ask a question. My name is Jamie Gallagher, and what I find interesting about the study is certainly the technical side, which we're spending a lot of time talking about, but I also find it very interesting that there's a whole nother side of this, and it is whether we call it the personal side that goes along with the technical side, critical thinking, problem solving, communication. Anybody on the panel, could you speak a little bit to that side? Certainly both sides are important. So maybe just a little bit of discussion on the skills and the plans to close that gap.
Yeah, so I can address that, Jamie, thanks. So we are currently for the region under development we use the term soft skills. That's the pretty broad term for what we're talking about. But being able to offer area employers, regional employers, access to candidates that have a credential, a regional or a local credential, validating or vetting their soft skills. So what we look to do basically is identify individuals that may need some assistance with communication, dependability, reliability. We would be able to put them through a fairly quick, I'm going to use the word formal training, but this could just be a workshop type training, might last a few hours with one of our professional career coaches. It'll be monitored, it'll be graded if you would. And then we want to be able to vet that skill with that participant. So whether that's contacting an employer, contacting an educator, somebody that this individual has contact with that we can say, hey, does this skill exist? Are they competent with this skill? And at that point, we want to offer employers some level of a credential that they will value. Is that an actual micro-credential of some type, formally stating that this individual has completed, this curriculum, if you would, is now considered, proficient with adaptability, workability, whatever. So we are in the middle of that now. We have the training curriculums in place. We're kind of beta testing now with some customers. And the next piece will be to bring that to the employers to get their input regarding, and we went to the employers beginning to get their input on what we should be training, but we also want their input on, is the credential something you would value? When we get to that point, we actually want to offer it to employers for their incumbent workforces as well. So an employer may find value in having somebody come in and talk about communication to their workforce or reliability and what that means. So we'll offer that as an opportunity.
And Jamie, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Jamie, that's a big push here too, and it always has been, as a work ethic emphasis that we try to place on our kids in our program. It's the number one thing we hear from our business and industry partners through our advisory groups. And it's a big component of a competency in workplace communication and skills going forward. So we teach English language arts in our programs, but that's an emphasis on communications within the industry that our students are working in. And it may start with just shaking hands. It may start with appropriate phone conversation, because students are so hesitant now even to pick up the phone and call and talk to somebody because they're so used to texting. And so we place a huge emphasis on appropriate dress for the field. All of those things are part of our programs that we put great emphasis on. Continue to work at it and try to get better at it. But those are the skills that we hear from our business partners they want our kids leaving our programs with.
Right, and I can talk to the employer side of it. So they may not have had those skills built. Terry doesn't have the class yet, but they will, which is great. So for us, when we have someone come on, it's about connecting them with the team as fast or as quickly as possible. So onboarding them, getting them the safety training that they need, and then getting them with their crew so they can feel like they're connected to the greater whole, which is really important. And then it's educating the mentors that you may have to tell them something 4 times before they hear it the first time. You know, people only retain about 30% of what you hear. So it's that continuous conversation of you are coaching, you are having to continually coach, especially for those that may not have skills, because we're hiring for ethic now versus skill building. And you're having to, it may take up to a year for that development to occur. It's not going to be 4 weeks. It's going to be the entire year. So there needs to be a lot more grace given. And then we talk about who owns what. So being really clear on the assignment piece. So leaders owning alignment, assignment, and execution. So they're responsible for creating the picture and making sure everyone knows where everyone needs to be. And then the team members coming in, you're responsible for attitude and energy and effort. So you may not have the skill yet, but you are responsible for showing up.
Yep.
And being there, and you own that piece. And if you're not owning that piece, well, then how do you expect to build skills from that? So, and that's, again, a year conversation. It's not short term. It is a long investment. And I think that's the switch that a lot in our industry are not used to because of that longer term time frame.
And Jamie, maybe I can just add to that. I mean, NMC through the extended ed program does offer some what we'd call soft skills courses. We've begun conversations with the Marsh Automotive Group about a sort of series of courses. Elizabeth Sonovan's on the call. She would be a contact that would help you get organized around that. And then it's when I want to put in a shameless plug for Seeds. Jennifer Flynn's on this call, but they run an EcoCore group, and they spend a lot of time as part of that developing soft skills and personal skills. And they would make for a really good pipeline of employer, future employees as well. So you may want to reach out to her as well. So,
Thank you. Really helpful. Really helpful.
I think one thing that I have noticed is that we need to also, really build these young people up, because I think there's a pride factor. I think they think if you're a plumber or an HVAC that maybe you're not as respected as someone who is a computer programmer or whatever. I tell these guys, they're all guys right now. We don't have any women in the field, but I tell these guys, you guys are rock stars. You don't understand how important you are to keeping this, the 5-county area, toilets flushing and the heat on in the winter. And you should really hold your head high and take pride in your work and understand that, your job has great value and great meaning, and you should be proud of that. And I thought it was interesting. We had an HVAC technician who cross-trained to a plumber, and he said, when I walked into a home as an HVAC technician, I was more respected than when I walked in as a plumber. Same guy, different title, different job that day. So I think that, as we're trying to, talk to these young people about the trade, I think that that's one aspect that we should, not forget about too.
That is one place where social does come in handy, because you can promote your crews as the rock stars, like Cindy said, as they are. So if any of you have social feeds, that's one place where you can highlight your team and get inexpensive traction there for that hero. I mean, we think that all of ours are artists, so I agree with Cindy. It is an art form, and just trying to show them as such.
Those are very good points, and I want to kind of connect a couple of threads there. We had some people that are on this call were also on a call yesterday with the Traverse Area Human Resources Association about attracting talent. And one of the things that, and I'm going to call on Lisa here to maybe share some of the discussion topics that we had yesterday. Terry, you mentioned earlier that idea of showing people the career path, right, as it were. You know, obviously Tanya and Cindy showing great examples of investing time and effort in that career building, and showing that you're important, right? You're valued, you're a respected career professional. One of the things that you mentioned earlier, Terry, was that using the job description as a bit of a sales piece. Lisa, could you talk a little bit about some of the conversation we had yesterday as it relates to making sure that you don't just have all these things in the employer, but the idea that you promote that on your job description to attract more workers?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I know yesterday we talked a little bit about the employers actually, and Terry, you talked about this a little. I think it was you, Terry, about making your job posting, reaching out and selling yourself to the employees, and it's just so important because a lot of the young adults who are a big part of our workforce right now are millennials, and Gen X is what we were talking about yesterday. They're really in tune with having a good culture fit for them, for being noticed, for being heard. So they're really looking for those little caveats and those people that are like saying, we can do this for you, and we're gonna. What we talked about too was let them know like their career pathway when they're there. They want to know what direction they can go. They don't want to stay stuck. They want to see where they can go from, step 1 to step 2, and then can I veer off to either step 3 or 4. So they like to see that big picture, and they want to hear about it. They don't want to wait a long time for information. They don't like lengthy emails. Text messages are great, or when you're doing your job posting, definitely promote yourself and squeak your own wheel. They'll pay attention.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Obviously, if you're an employer that wants to be an employer of choice, and you offer some of these things, whether it's on-the-job training, career ladder, transparency, all those things, putting that out there as early in on the process of hiring as you can is going to be attractive. Other comments, questions from the group? Other things that people would like to cover? Be happy to please just unmute yourself and speak up if you have something you'd like to ask.
I think one thing, Warren, that's been brought up, but I think we can bring it up more than once, is we don't have to wait for the skills gap survey or the next skills gap survey for us to all work together. And so we're really fortunate in this region to have such a collaborative group from the Career Tech Center through NMC, through all our valued employers. And then also the initiatives like Kendra and Dan are part of the Build Your Life type campaigns that help drive people into our CTC programs, our employers like Cindy has, or our college on there. So I think the biggest takeaway is to make sure that those lines of communication are always open, that we know who that person is, or we can reach out to that person. And I know that I can refer them to Pat, and Pat can refer them to Dan or Brenda or wherever, and we can find them that solution. So I think it's letting the region know that they could reach out literally to anybody on this board, and we can connect them back to that entity that can help them out.
Yeah, great, thanks, Jason. We did have some, we have more time available. I want to make sure we get all the questions. So please be thinking if you have a final question to ask. In the meantime, I would like to put something back out to the panel that we had talked about ahead of time. There are some challenges out there right now with the legalization of cannabis, right? And how that impacts the talent pool. Anyone would like to speak up about that? I see that Mindy Fernandez has raised her hand. Please, Mindy, speak up now if it's related to this question, or if anyone else has something as it relates to that cannabis issue.
I'm sorry, it's not about cannabis.
Okay.
But real quickly, I wanted to let you know that I work for State Representative John Roth, and we are working on both housing and childcare. The childcare package that we're working on with Representative O'Malley is getting a hearing on Tuesday of next week. That will decrease regulations, that 4-inch packet of regulations that Rep. O'Malley likes to carry around with him on childcare centers. Hopefully to make it easier for people to open and run those. And then also John's specific bill is to allow more locations for childcare, and so they can be closer to where we work. So just wanted to let you know that we're in the legislature, we're working on those issues.
Great, thanks, Mindy. And we do appreciate being able to work with Representative Roth and Representative O'Malley on not just that childcare package of bills, but also hopefully some things on housing in the future that will also help with the talent pipeline for our companies. Tanya,
I can really quickly add, you asked about cannabis. 2 points to that is numbers. So everyone, how do we get more interest? And we're coming up with great ways to do that. The Traverse Connect, you actually had a really interesting statistic a couple years ago at the breakfast or luncheon that we may need to consider other venues. So those that may have been drug dependent, that's a big section of workforce that may be useful for those that are recovering. So we may need to reconsider how we're approaching those types of stigmas that have been in society previously. And then cannabis for us, we're federally mandated. So cannabis is still a controlled substance and unable to be used. But we have had to reconsider how we go about testing, because we do have an off season. So we cannot necessarily control someone's actions when they're not actively working for us. So those are just considerations. And I'm sure there's going to be more because government continues to review and decide what to regulate and what not to.
Good points. Thank you. Any other questions from the group? Anything else that anyone would like to share? All right. Well, number one, I want to thank our panelists for participating today. I want to thank everyone that helped participate in the study, as well as the group of organizations that participated in making sure that study got the right information. Thanks to everyone for being here with us today and the questions and the discussion. We are going to continue to do what we can to support all of you in bridging those talent gaps that you have, and hoping to grow our economy further. The one thing that I will leave with the group, and I'll put this in the chat right now, is that West Michigan and our partners in Grand Rapids have put a little bit more structure around kind of this conversation. And for anyone that's not familiar, talnet.org has more detail, but it's specifically about kind of an ongoing community network trying to solve some of these issues. I don't know a lot about it. It was recently introduced to our team. I just think that it's something we should all be aware of, and it potentially could serve as a model for our organization, in our community going forward. So please research that, and hopefully that can be a topic of a future conversation. And with that, thanks everyone for being with us today. We appreciate your time, and this recording will be up on our website, or excuse me, on our YouTube channel for others to share and view as well. So thanks again. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.